Hi guys, I'm going to do two different videos for reading today. So I'll do one in which I read through the extract, and then the second video we'll do the vocab lab, quick quiz, and some of the partner questions that you do in lessons. Okay, so today's extract is called The Wolf Wilder, and it's by the same author who wrote Rooftoppers, Catherine Rundell. It's another amazing book and one I recommend that you have a go at reading if you ever get the chance. We're going to look at the first chapter and then we'll do some questions afterwards. So, what I'll do is I'll read it through to you. If you'd like to read it on your own, that's fine. If you want to listen to me read, that's fine as well. Okay, so it's before we go into the first chapter, it's got a little note on wolf wilders, and we'll read that through first. Um, Wolf wilders are almost impossible to spot. A wolf wilder is not like a lion tamer, nor a circus ringmaster. Wolf wilders can go their whole lives without laying eyes on a sequin. They look more or less like ordinary people. There are clues. More than half are missing a piece of finger, the lobe of an ear, a toe or two. They go through clean bandages the way other people go through socks. They smell very faintly of raw meat. In the western wild parts of Russia, there are gangs of wolf merchants who hunt newborn pups. They snatch them still wet and blind and carry them away in boxes, selling them to men and women who live elegant lives in thick carpeted houses in St. Petersburg. A wolf pup can fetch 1,000 rubles, a pure white one as much as twice as that. A wolf in the house is said to bring good fortune, money and fame, boys with clean noses and girls without pimples. Peter the Great had 7 wolves, all as white as the moon. The captured wolves wear golden chains. They're taught to sit while people around them laugh and drink and blow cigar smoke into their eyes. They are fed caviar, which quite reasonably they find disgusting. Some grow so fat that the fur on their stomachs sweeps the ground as they waddle up and down stairs and collects fluff and ash. But a wolf cannot be tamed in the way a dog can be tamed, and it cannot be kept indoors. Wolves, like children, are not born to lead calm lives. Always the wolf goes mad at the imprisonment, and eventually it bites off and eats a little piece of someone who was not expecting to be eaten. The question then arises, what to do with the wolf? Aristocrats in Russia believe that the killing of a wolf brings a unique kind of bad luck. It is not the glamorous kind of bad luck, not runaway trains and lost fortunes, but something dark and insidious. If you kill a wolf, they say, your life begins to disappear. Your child will come of age on that morning that war is declared. Your toenails will grow inwards, and your teeth outwards, and your gums bleed in the night and stain your pillow red. So the wolf must not be shot nor starved. Instead, it is packed up like a parcel by nervous butlers and sent away to the wolf wilder. The wilder will teach the wolves how to be bold again, how to train, how to hunt and fight, and how to distrust humans. They teach them how to howl, because a wolf who cannot howl is like a human who cannot laugh. And the wolves are released back onto the land they were born on, which is tough and alive as the wolves themselves. So there's a little introduction as to what wolf wilders are. Okay, obviously this story is set in Russia many years ago. Chapter 1. This is what we focused on, chapter 1. Once upon a time, 100 years ago, there was a dark and stormy girl. The girl was Russian, and although her hair and eyes and fingernails were dark all of the time, she was stormy only when she thought it absolutely necessary, which was fairly often. Her name was Fyodora. She lived in a wooden house made of timber taken from the surrounding forests. The walls were layered with sheep's wool to keep out the Russian winter, and the inside was lit with hurricane lamps. Theo had painted the lamps every colour in her box of paints, so the house cast out light into the forest in reds and greens and yellows. Her mother had cut and sanded the door herself, and the wood was 8 inches thick. Theo had painted it snow blue. The wolves had added claw marks over the years, which helped dissuade unwelcome visitors. It all began, all of it, with someone knocking on the snow blue door, although knocking was not the right word for this particular noise, Theo thought. It sounded as though someone was trying to dig a hole in the wood with their knuckles. But any knocking at all was unusual. Nobody knocked. It was just her and her mother and the wolves. Wolves do not knock. If they want to come in, they come in through the window, whether it is open or not. Theo put down the ski she was oiling and then listened. It was early, and she was still wearing her nightdress. She had no dressing gown, but she pulled on the jumper her mother had knitted, which came down to the scar on her knee, and ran to the front door. Her mother was wrapped in a bearskin housecoat, just looking up from the fire she'd been lighting in the sitting room. "I'll do it." Thea ran past her to answer the door. It was stiff. Ice had sealed the hinges. Her mother grabbed at her. "Wait, Theo!" But Theo already had opened the door, and before she could jump back, it slapped inwards, catching the side of her head. Hack! Theo stumbled and sat down on her ankle. She said a word that made the stranger pushing his lip. She said a word that made the stranger pushing his way past her raise his eyebrows and curl his lip. The man had a face of right angles, a jutting nose and wrinkles in angry places deep enough to cast shadows in the dark. "Where is Marina Petrovich?" He shoved past her down the hall, leaving a trail of snow. Theo got to her knees and then lurched back as two more men in grey coats and black boots marched past her, missing her fingers by inches. "Move, girl!" They carried between them, slung by its legs, the body of a young elk. It was dead and dripping blood. "Wait!" said Theo. Both wore the tall, furry hats of the Tsar's Imperial Army and exaggeratedly official expressions. Theo ran after them. She readied her eyeballs and knees to fight. The two soldiers dropped the elk on the rug. The sitting room was small, and the two young men were large and moustached. Their moustaches seemed to take up most of the room. Up close, they looked barely more than 16, but the man with the door-beating fist was old, and his eyes were the oldest thing about him. Theo's stomach bunched up under her throat. The man spoke over Theo's head to her mother. "Marina Petrovich, I am General Rakov." "What do you want?" Marina's back was against the wall. "I am the commander of the Tsar's Imperial Army for the 1,000 miles south of St. Petersburg, and I am here because your wolves did this," he said. He kicked at the elk. Blood spread across its brightly poisoned shoe. "My wolves?" Her mother's face was steady, but her eyes were neither calm nor happy. "I do not own any wolves." "You bring them here," said Rakov. His eyes had a coldness in them you did not expect to see in a living thing. "That makes them your responsibility." His tongue was stained yellow by tobacco. No, neither of those things are true," said Theo's mother. "Other people send the wolves when they tire of them, the aristocrats, the rich. We untain them, that's all. And wolves cannot be owned. Lying will not help you, madam." "I am not." "Those 3 wolves I see your child with, those are not yours." "No, of course not," began Theo. "They're—" But her mother shook her head hard and gestured to Theo to stay silent. Theo bit down on her hair instead and tucked her fists into her armpits to be ready. Her mother said, "They are not. They are hers only in the sense that I am hers and she is mine. They are Theo's companions, not her pets. But that bite isn't the work of a black or white or grey." "Yes, the jaw marks," said Theo, looking at the elk. "They're from a much smaller wolf." "You are mistaken," said Rakov, in imagining I wished to hear excuses. His voice was growing less official, louder, ragged-edged. Theo tried to steady her breathing. The 2 young men she saw were staring at her mother. One of them had let his jaws sag open. Marina's shoulders and backs and hips were wide. She had muscles that were more commonly seen on men, or rather, Theo thought, on wolves. But her face, a visitor once said, was built on the blueprint used for snow leopards and for saints. The look, he had said, is goddess modified. Theo had pretended at the time not to be proud. But Rakov seemed immune to her mother's beauty. "I have been sent to collect compensation for the Tsar, and I shall do that immediately. Do not play games with me. You owe the Tsar 100 rubles." I don't have 100 rubles. I am not. Rakov slammed his fist against the wall. He was surprisingly strong for so old and shriveled a man, and the wooden wall shuddered. "Woman, I have no interest in protests or excuses. I have been sent to wrest obedience and order from this god-forsaken place." He glanced down at his red speckled shoe. "The Tsar rewards success." Without warning, he kicked the elk so hard that its legs flailed, and Theo let out a hiss of horror. You! He crossed to her, leaning down until his face, veined and yellowed with tobacco, was inches from her. If I had a child with a stare as insolent as yours, she would be beaten. Sit there and keep out of my sight. He pushed her backwards, and the cross hanging from his neck caught in Theo's hair. He tugged it away viciously and passed through the door back into the hall. The soldiers followed him. Marina signalled to Theo to stay, the same hand gesture they used for the wolves, and ran after him. Theo stood in the doorway, waiting for the buzzing in her ears to die away. Then she heard a cry and something breaking, and ran skidding down the hall in her socks. Her mother was not there, but the soldiers had crowded into Theo's bedroom, filling her room with their smell. Theo flinched away from it. It was smoke, she thought, and a year's worth of sweat and unwashed facial hair. One of the soldiers had an underbite he could have picked his own nose with. Nothing worth anything, said one soldier. His eyes moved across her reindeer-skin bedspread, the hurricane lamp, and came to rest on her skis leaning against the fireplace. Theo ran to stand protectively in front of them. These are mine, she said. They're nothing to do with the Tsar. I made them. It had taken a whole month for each ski, whittling them down every evening and smoothing them with grease. Theo gripped one in both fists like a spear. She hoped the prickle in her eyes was not visible. Get away from me. Rakov smiled, not sweetly. He took hold of Theo's lamp, held it up to the morning light. Theo grabbed at it. Wait, said Marina. I've lost where I am. Wait, said Marina. She stood in the doorway. There was a bruise on her cheek that had not been there before. Can't you see this is my daughter's room? The young men laughed. Rakov did not join in. He only stared at them until they turned red and fell silent. He crossed to Theo's mother, studied the mark on her cheek. He leaned forward until the tip of his yellow nose was touching her skin and sniffed. Marina stood motionless, her lips bitten shut. Then Rakov grunted and threw the lamp at the ceiling. George! Cried Theo, and ducked. Broken glass rained down on her shoulders. She lunged forward at the general, swinging blindly with a ski. Get out, said Theo, get out! The general laughed, caught it and wrenched it from her. Just sit down and behave, child, before you make me angry. Get out, said Theo. Sit, or you will end up in the same position as that elk. Marina seemed to jerk into life. What? What insanity in your head makes you think you can threaten my child? You both disgust me, Rakov shook his head. It is an abomination to live with those animals. Wolves are vermin with teeth. That is, Theo's mother's face spoke 100 different swear words before she said, inaccurate.